All right, so jumping into advanced path Blackguard. So Rogue is typically thought of between the two fighting pools of Adept and Rogue. Rogue is typically thought of as the defensive pool out of the two. Like Adept is typically about offense and Rogue is typically about defense. What's really interesting here is that there are four pathways that are all Rogue Rogue and Adept Adept, and they each respectively care about offense and defense for the given pool. So this Blackguard is about making Rogue really offensive. So contrary to its defensive nature, a Blackguard hones his Knavery and Rogue abilities for the purpose of devastating their opponents offensively. Most rogues rely on their ability to surprise the target from behind. A Blackguard employs his talents however he pleases. Uh, a good way to understand Blackguard is most Blackguards tend not to worry about the honor of fair combat. After all, the only fair fight is the one you walk away from. How can anyone enjoy honor if they're dead? Uh, very quickly summarizes Blackguard in the simplest of terms, which is these guys are in it for themselves. They're the offensive rogues, and they're here to kill you really quickly and walk the hell away as fast as possible. um, I wouldn't quite say this is assassin, but which used to be a pathway, but this is most certainly I think the closest you have to being a rogue and being offensive specifically. So yeah, blackguards. We'll jump right into the skills. For 5 build, they get a reduction to all offensive, knavery, and rogue skills. So this reduces the cost of knavery and rogue skills, offensive ones, by 1 to a minimum of 1. Uh, so this is actually a mistype, a misinformation. Okay, this applies to knavery, but this does not apply to rogue. Actually, literally today there was a conversation in Discord about reducing upper skills, so skills that involve upper pools, so adept and rogue typically. Uh, by reducing, there's a rule that says you cannot reduce them by more than half of the skill that they cost, rounded up. So auto deflect is 5, and you couldn't reduce it past 3, essentially. So a -2 is the biggest reduction you can get on those. Which is a very niche rule, and it's from the old rule book, and it did not get typed up in this neat rule book, because if there's I'm gonna save you the time of swapping that over, but understand that you cannot reduce upper skills by more than half. That is a flat rule, rounded up. So while this can reduce knavery skills to a minimum of 1, you cannot do that with upper skills or rogue in this case. That's very important to know. This is a mistype. This is misinformation here. Okay, anyway, so you reduce all the costs of your offensive stuff by 1. And this includes the disarms, just anything that you could offensively do to another person with knavery or rogue. And in contrast, all the weapon mastery and adept skills costs are increased by 1. And this doesn't say offensive or defensive, just all weapon mastery and adept. So you're dedicating yourself to doing rogue stuff, right? Because it's kind of like how spellcasters concentrate on a specific sphere where they're getting -1 to that spell spear and they're getting +1 to everything else. In the same way, these upper reductions that come from pathways typically do that. And then your defensive knavery and rogue skills do not change, however. So this doesn't change the cost of auto deflect or magic parry or magic deflect, and like dodge. So dodge doesn't cost more when you're a blackguard, which is sick. Pretty solid skill, especially for 5 build. We're talking about literally a reduction. So if you think of the races and what a standard knavery reduction costs, which is 5, this is a combined knavery and rogue reduction of 1 for 5 pool or for 5 build. So that's really solid there. Really solid skill, concentration, offensive rogue. Uh, Blackguard gets +1 to all backstabs. Backstab bonus allows the character to add 1 point of back damage to all backstab modifiers. So, There are mechanics that I haven't covered that are different from skills, and they're essentially like passive abilities that allow you to apply extra damage. They're called proficiencies, essentially. They are called proficiencies, and they allow you to increase the damage on very unique things. And there's like 10 million proficiencies. So you can get a proficiency in your right hand, and then you can get a proficiency in your right hand with swords, and then you can get a proficiency with your right hand with swords stabbing in the back, right? So you can, and it's like +1, +1, +2, right? So you're getting like a flat +5 if you're doing those things with like those weapons, right? That's what proficiencies are, and they're typically very expensive. They're like a flat +1 to your right hand is like 10 build. Okay, and when you think of like enhanced strength, it functions similarly to enhanced strength in terms of adding damage. It doesn't interact obviously like strength does with other things. But that's what a backstab bonus is is referring to the backstab modifiers. So if you have multiple backstab modifiers, and you can also buy them multiple times, okay? So if you want to dump like 50 build into my right hand backstab and get +2 like 10 times, so you're doing like 20 damage on backstabs, okay? You're also adding an additional 1 point of damage to all the backstab modifiers. Right. So we're keeping that there. I don't know the exact specifics of this, but it's very relevant because there was a character that came in, like this was just a standard thing, and Rogue, and this used to be different, and it used to be stronger, let's say. Let's say it was mechanically stronger. And this Blackguard in general got nerfed. It got reduced in strength because like this used to be -2 or something crazy. Like it used to be nuts. And it's still really good. It's still a rogue reduction, which does not exist anywhere else, right? Like we haven't seen rogue reductions until just now. Um, because he was like Snake's revenging and adding like because Snake's revenge allows you to attack from the front and apply as if you were attacking from the back, and waylay. And he was like Snake's revenging and instantly gaining like +40 damage from the front. He was like dancing with a Snake's revenge essentially, which is nuts. And that is kind of relatively incentivized here for you to do that. And he was like the first person to full on send it down proficiencies. And he was like base swinging 47 waylay from the front like every fight. And it was busted. It was honestly kind of gross to watch, like in a good way. Like it was like, wow, that's really cool and impressive. But it was so strong that they had to change some of the ruling for that. And there's some discussion about spirit of the rules, but that was like, that was how the rules were written and that was how they were intended to work. Like he wasn't misunderstanding anything to do that. And they just, and like nobody had done it before, so they realized like, oh, this is kind of like we need to change this. And plot's pretty responsive to what people are doing in game, and when they see something like that, they have a discussion and they sit down and they're like, well, should we, it's a very much a democratic, like, of in effect democratic process in terms of, they don't just immediately go like, well, sorry bud, you're screwed because we didn't like that. Most of the time, it has a lot of conversation behind it, and changes are not taken lightly. But yeah, so this allows you this this one sentence skill led to a lot of problems a while ago. It was funny. It's still pretty good. All right, Blackguard, Serpent's Vendetta. Blackguard gets a reduction specifically to Snake's Revenge and Deathblow. The per use cost of Snake's Revenge is reduced by 5, and the cost of Deathblow is reduced by 2 to a minimum of 1. So Deathblow is the slay equivalent in Knavery, right? So this is a Knavery skill, so you can reduce it by 1, or you can reduce it down to 1, okay? So that's neat. Snake's Revenge costs 15 Rogue by default, so then it goes to 10 Rogue, and then it's an offensive Rogue skill, so it's getting reduced again over here. So you're doing it for 9 with just this skill set, right? Not even there are items in game that allow you to get rogue reductions, okay? There are items that let you do that, which is why it's possible to reduce something more than its half in a rogue skill, Hence why I talked about the minimum of one thing with Rogue earlier. Um, so just with the skill set that we've seen here, you Snake's Revenge at 9, which is pretty solid. That's one less than Slay. It's one less than Vorpal Slay. It's pretty good. Dance of the Adept is 10, so you're doing this for one less than Dance of the equivalent of Dance of the Adept, but for rogues. You're doing it for 9, which is cool. Um, Not much to say a whole lot. This is amazing, by the way, in case you didn't know. Reducing a rogue skill by 5 is actually disgusting. Like, if you reduce dodge by 5, it would be busted. Um, so yeah, that's why you cannot reduce it past 15 would be 14 divided by 2 is 7. So you couldn't reduce Snake's Revenge past like 7 or 8, around that number. I don't know if it's specifically 7 or if it's specifically 8. But you couldn't reduce it past that number. So you're doing it for 9 though. Like you're doing it for a 9. So that's pretty hot. Alright, Chaotic Strike. Blackguard gains the ability to swing for confusion, pain, or paralysis. The skill can be purchased up to 10 times. So for 2 build, so you're looking at 20 build here for all 10 uses. Each purchase gives the Blackguard a pool of effects they may use at will. 1 strike of confusion, pain, or paralysis. So purchasing the skill would allow them to do 10. Oh, okay. So each purchase gives you 1 strike of confusion, pain, or paralysis. Okay, so that's cool. So you're actually looking at like 30 total skills. I think in my understanding of this is that you're looking at 30 total skills of like 30 total strikes of confusion, pain, and paralysis, um, like combined, and you're looking at 10 of each of these. This will allow the Blackguard 10 confusion strike, 10 pain strikes, 10 paralysis strikes. These are at will and may be combined with other skills. For example, so this is like a lot like Reavers and Striking for Massive, where they can spend upper to apply massive. You have a pool equal to the number of times that you've like purchased the skill of effects that you can just flatly apply to a swing that you do. So for example, with a base swing of 7 silver, they may use a pain strike to swing for 7 silver pain. They may also use Master Assassinate to swing for 207 silver pain. Right. The standard, so paralysis, pain, and confusion is an effect, essentially. And typically those effects in the rulebook last for 10 minutes, and this is specifically saying that hey, when a Blackguard does it, it's only 1 minute. And it's only if body damage was done for the strike. So if you hit a guy for 10 paralysis and he has armor, and you only hit his armor, you didn't hit his body total, like let's say he has 20 armor and you did 10 to him, well, you hit him for 10, but the paralysis doesn't apply unless it's doing damage specifically to body. So if he had 9 armor and you did 10 paralysis to him, as soon as that 1 paralysis breaks the armor and hits his body, then he's taking a paralysis effect. Okay, that's how you understand that. And we'll go further into that. I think after these pathways, I really like after these pathways, that's the last like big section of like my opinion. Here's like a thing that I can tell you about type of like here's 20 things like a race or an augment or a pathway that I can like give you my opinion on. We're gonna go pretty much back to like organized. Here's a scripted video, and I really need to do that for how attacks work in the game specifically, because that is also a very confusing thing for a lot of new people, um, especially people that come from other games and have previous understandings that need to be unlearned to be able to play Shiftedlands effect. Like, I mean, not that they like that they're what they had learned was wrong. It's just like they have an understanding that confuses them when they come to this game, because this game is very unique when it comes to like defining how things work. I mean, if we literally just look at combat anatomy of a swing, there's like look at this crap, man. Like there's like a gazillion things you could call. You could call 200 runic radius element like disease slay life drain. Like you could that's like a valid call, theoretically possible, right? It's something dumb like that. All right, back to Blackguard though. I need to do a video on that, essentially, is what I'm saying. But yeah, so they get to add these. This is a solid skill. especially for like the two for your use, but for 20 build, this is really good. Like, and you're not paying pool like other things let you pay pool to like strike for confusion or pay pool for pain or pay pool for paralysis. The fact that you just flat out get to do this like 10 times a game is really good, right? Like that's actually really solid that it's just like I know I can do this 10 times a game and I don't have to worry about reducing my pool. So, it's not I spent 20 build and then now I can pay more pool in a given game to do it. It's I spent 20 build and now I can just do it and I still don't affect my pool. So typically like swing for paralyze is a rogue skill that costs 2 rogue and you have to swing it from back. So instead of paying to rogue, if you paid to build a couple games ago, you can just do it for free and you still have all of your rogue that you would normally have. So that's the advantage of this really. That's like kind of where the value of this is coming from. And that's super solid skill. Silent Fury. Blackguard, so if you've seen Fury from Reaver or I think Eldritch Trickster could Fury spells, Silent Fury is used when any offensive knavery or rogue skill allows the character to perform 3 consecutive strikes at 2 times the skill name's cost. For example, if you wanted to perform Waylay Silent Fury, would immediately strike for Waylay 3 times within 3 seconds. Your total expenditure of your skill is equal to 2 times your cost of Waylay. Essentially, this makes rapid and successive assaults more efficient. Okay, so the unique thing about Silent Fury is that you don't have to yell out Fury when you're doing it. So that's pretty neat because you're kind of an assassin-y type. You're a rogue, right? You want to kill them in silence with as little, yelling out my combat attack as possible. And so you get to Fury your offensive, knavery, and rogue stuff. So if you jump on a guy's back and you go like 200 waylay, 200 waylay, 200 waylay, and you're paying for the master assassinate, which is 200, and you're also paying for waylay cost, which is cost of 3, and then you're getting to Fury both of those things without even announcing it, right? Which is hot. It's super cool. Super good skill. Furying is always a good mechanic. It's like a pseudo mechanic that kind of like gets covered across a bunch of things, or a bunch of different aspects of the game get Fury, and so it's cool to see it here. Blackguard can swing for weakness for combat. Target has -8 strength for 10 minutes. Strength can have an effective rating cannot have below 0, but at any time the strength total is adjusted during the effect, the target must account for the -8. Uh, yeah, weakness is spooky here. For combat duration, so you pay. This can be purchased 10 times, and it has 0 cost to activate, but it's a combat duration ability. So in 10 of your fights, you can, if you purchase this 10 times, which for 5 build, that's kind of interesting, they get -8 strength. Okay. You don't really have things you're not swinging massive in this skill set specifically, at least. So them having lower weakness is interesting. I guess it reduces their base swing. So if you were fighting a flesh golem that has like 6 strength and you hit them with this, they would be swinging for 3 less damage. It's interesting. This synergizes really well when you have somebody who is striking for massive, massive being the requirement that they have +8 strength to block it. So this is unique in that it synergizes with other things, but as far as in this set as a whole, I'm not seeing a whole lot of synergy with this specific skill. It's neat. I don't know why it's there though. That's essentially what I'm trying to get across. Cobra Strike. Blackguard swings for more damage during combat. At the moment of initiating the skill, the player must say out loud Cobra Strike. The player may then swing +10 damage for combat duration per 2 knavery spent to a maximum of +50. 10 knavery may not be reduced per use. Damage will only apply when striking targets from behind. Cobra Strike will end if you do not engage the target for a period of 60 seconds. This ability may be combined with other melee abilities. Okay, so theoretically, you call Snake's Revenge, and now you're base swinging Waylay from the front, and you're also now applying all of your attacks are mechanically landing from behind. That's effectively what Snake's Revenge is doing for you, which means that your +50 that you got by spending 10 Knavery with this Cobra Strike thing is allowing you to apply +50 when you're swinging when you're swinging your Snake's Revenge, right? So it's pretty solid. It requires a lot of pool. It's neat that it only uses Knavery, and specifically Dervish, which is the offensive adept skill, has the same skill, but it functions like like a tiny Dance of the Adept for adept explicitly. So, and it's just very similar to the skill. So when you eventually get to Dervish, you're gonna see a skill that looks super similar to this, but it has the will only apply when striking targets from behind. It has that dropped, which is very enigmatic of adept versus rogue or knavery versus weapon mastery, right? Because if you understand that those two have advantages and disadvantages based on like where they're attacking and stuff like that, that like this is very similar and it makes a whole lot of sense that this has to be applied from behind. And really, Snake's Revenge just allows you to apply it from behind, even though you're hitting them in the front. So that's like that synergizes really well here. And then Blackguard, fresh out of options, Blackguard can use melee abilities, weapon strikes, and abilities while in a cornered rat, which is sweet. So cornered rat is a unique rogue skill, which is essentially the rogue equivalent to the Sentinel Fortress. So Fortress allows you to stand still with your 2 feet planted, and you get to auto parry as much as you want, with no cost associated with it as long as you haven't moved your feet. And it very much is a good skill. Fresh out of options, so Cornered Rat is the rogue equivalent, which is if you're in a literal corner, if you can and it's like you have to justify that it's an actual corner. It's not like, oh, I'm between two trees, so this is a corner. No, it's like I'm in the corner of a room and my foot's planted in that corner. Like my back, like I'm leaning forward on one foot and my back foot is on the corner. You may call Cornered Rat, and then you may dodge infinite amount of times. Okay, but the only thing you can do is dodge. You can't phase, you can't use other things. As soon as you do, the Cornered Rat drops, and it's like 15 rogue, so it's expensive, right? So it technically pays for itself if you get more than one dodge out of it, because dodge is 10. So if you dodge twice, you'll be having effectively 20 rogue for free, and you only spent 15. So but like that's why Cornered Rat is good. And I didn't cover it. It was one of the things where I was like, go look at Rogue if you want to learn all the Rogue skills. Um, I didn't cover it when I covered Rogue inherently, like specifically. So, but it's good to know what that skill does because now you get to attack while you're in a freaking Cornered Rat. That's nuts. So you just gotta have infinite dodges while you're stuck in a corner. Um, Cornered Rat does come up and it is useful and it's a very important rogue skill to have if you are a rogue because there are a lot of bad times when you are like stuck in there's a lot of bad times when you're a cornered rat. When you're stuck in a corner and you've got NPCs wailing on you. Like that's not a good place to be in and having cornered rat in that moment is awesome. This is the cookie too, so it's 0 build. I'm going to assume since Bard's cookie was 0 and this is 0 as well that most of the cookies are going to be cost 0. But yeah, fresh out of options. It's a cool, gritty name. And that was Blackguard in its whole, in its entirety. So Blackguards are just really good offensive rogues, equivalent to what one might consider an assassin, typically. There used to be an assassin path, and I think there was an assassin path and Blackguard at one point, but I'm pretty sure like it's now you're just Blackguard now, right? Like there's not a whole lot there's not an assassin, quote unquote, anymore specifically. So it's just Blackguard. And this is really strong if you wanted to do rogue and like be offensive though, instead of being defensive and like dodging all the time. So yeah, this is Blackguard. Moving on to to Bodyguard, which is the I'm a rogue and I'm going super hard into my defense. That's what Bodyguard's about. So yep. Thanks for watching. That was Blackguard.